So Frank, what's going on with the Cardinals? What do you see? Are they trending up?
Yeah, they're
Are
a
they,
third of the way through the season. What do you like? What don't you like?
Well, they have won 14 out of their last 21. And what we're seeing with Gorman and Wynn up the middle, with the exception of some miscues defensively, is the birth of two stars. I mean, Nolan Gorman's going to hit 40 home runs as a second baseman. And I think he's going to be okay defensively. This is just an aberration. And Mason Wynn, I think he's more Gary Templeton than Ozzie Smith, but he's
how
special.
so?
Well, that he's never going to be quite Ozzy in terms of attention to detail and just elite defensively, but he's going to have these heart-stopping defensive moments where he'll be in the hole. He has Templeton's arm. And the crazy thing about Ozzy is that he played the second half of his career with a torn rotator cuff. He told me once, I knew I only had like one good throw that night.
Is that well
Yeah.
known?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before the game, he would never throw the ball hard, but he knew that, hey, look, with my rotator cuff, I'm going to be able to throw it hard one time a night. But I think he's got a little bit more of Templeton's athleticism and just his, maybe he hits with a little bit more power than Ozzy did. And look, people want to disparage Templeton. He ended up with 2,000 hits. He was a really good player. So
Oh yeah,
somewhere Templeton and Sean Dunston. So I feel good about that up the middle. And I think Alec Burleson is a professional hitter. What's disappointing though is, are we seeing a decline at the corners, and is it permanent or is that an aberration? So,
Mm.
I mean, your father, who I talk to every Monday, is not real wild about Paul Goldschmidt's future. And when you're 36 and your numbers are declining, it's logical to think that. The only way I can defend that is that I'm in the locker room, and I don't want to sound too invasive here, but of all the athletes I've ever been around, Paul Goldschmidt is the most well-conditioned and the best built and the guy who cares most about his body. So I don't think he's getting old overnight. I still think he's going to be productive, but he's probably not a 35, 110 RBI guy again.
What? How does that? How do you think that comes about? Somebody extending. What do you think that? There's like a secret sauce. So I'm thinking like Raul Ibanez back later in his career. Or think about some of those old Angels played in the 40s. Anderson. Like there is something that could potentially be there for Paul in the next 6 years. If he, I don't know if translate to everybody or if
Yeah.
well, I think it might also go to what do you think the problem is that he's having right now? Because it's his offensive numbers are way down. Is it in the offseason he was bragging about going down to what was that place and working on a swing a lot and sometimes I go back to Pete Rose's advice. Your swing is what you got you there. Don't mess with it. Like sometimes these guys are trying to tweak the swing so much that they get out of sync, right?
yeah.
So
Well, go ahead, Frank.
Well, yeah, everybody talks about his bat speed, but then we've seen quite a few stretches where that bat speed is exactly the same. And he has been, as great as he's been, a pretty streaky hitter. I mean, he's had some miserable beginnings and then he's gotten smoking hot. I just think that we have to get accustomed to no longer the 35 home run guy, but the 25 home run guy. And if he gets to an 800 OPS, I'd be happy with that.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Well, you're not losing offensively. Paul, I think,
Yeah.
is still top of not. You see how many times he's had to pick Win and guys at third, and you don't notice it because you don't notice it. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Good point.
Yeah.
You kind of said it. And that's kind of I haven't really worried too much about Goldschmidt because he definitely gets. You look at April 20th on, he tends to get much. He warms up, and then by end of June, July, he is smoking hot. So we get to July and we're having this conversation. I think I'm going to be a little more worried about Goldschmidt. I'm concerned right now, but not overly worried. But I am worried about it, the other guy because he's younger at the other pocket you're talking about, and his defense lately, Arenado has not looked like the Arenado of old.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he's a guy too that the mental thing just gnaws at him. I'm around him quite a bit, and nobody takes these airs and these hitless stretches harder than he does. It just wears it like nobody else. And you love that he cares so much, but boy, it's like he needs to take a pill to just chill and realize you're Nolan Arenado. You're going to the Hall of Fame. You're going to be fine. Then he had that stretch, just last week where he started lifting the ball and hitting home runs. So again, maybe not 30 home runs, but maybe 25. And I'd be happy with that with this group.
I was going to ask what your thoughts were about the bullpen. That's with that Middleton going down. I was really hoping he would show up and kind of give them that lift that they looks like their bullpen needs right now because they feel like they're a little overtaxed at the moment. But what are your thoughts?
Well, he was the guy that we were all so high on in spring training because he throws so hard and his body's so big. He's so daunting on the mound. You thought, man, you put him with the other three at the back end, you're in great shape. And to lose him for the whole season, and who knows, when he'll ever come back if the Cardinals will re-sign him. They get an option year next year at 5 or 6 million. That may be too high to take a guy coming off surgery. They also have had, who would have thought Gallegos would have dramatically fallen like this quick? And I've never been wild about him, but he's been, the numbers don't lie. He's been a pretty good pitcher. So they've had some serious losses in that bullpen, and they're so overtaxed because, we have 5 and 6 inning starting pitchers.
They got when? Do you know any timeline on
Yeah, it should be within a week or two.
that? I think even
I like him out of the pen.
Yeah.
Put him in the pen. And if you had
3-4 inning
him
guy.
and Libitor from the left side out of the pen, that's fine with Romero. You know what I would do if I were the Cardinals? They have Tink Hence, who probably has the best arm in the organization. And I would just say, go ahead and go out there. We'll give you the ball every 5th day. I mean, the Braves do stuff like that. Why don't the Cardinals do stuff like that? And I know he's not tearing it up quite yet in Double-A, but he's got the best arm. And I don't know if Andre Palante is going to be your answer in the 5th spot. We'll see what happens there. But I'd take a gamble because they don't have a 5th guy right now.
Yeah, well, he was one. And what about their AAA? They've got a couple guys in AAA who aren't necessarily tearing it up, but they also seem like they've gone through stretches. Down in, where they've looked good at times. Who's the other cat that they traded for last offseason that's down there in AAA that's done okay? He was
Roby.
Yeah.
Got a good arm. Yeah.
Are the Cardinals just going to pretend like Jordan Walker?
It's unbelievable that you can go from the number one prospect in baseball to leading the Cardinals in batting average as a rookie among qualified hitters to now having almost 130 at-bats in Memphis and nobody discussing you with only one home run, by the way. He was hitting 266 as of a few days
It was a bomb, though. He still has the juice.
Yeah.
Like, some guys like hitting. They're not willing to risk.
What do you think it is? Is that a mental thing? Do you think it's the playing with the swing in spring training like he kind of discussed, or do you think it's just a maturity thing?
I had Brian Bowringer on today, former world championship pitcher with the Yankees from St. Louis, Northwest House Springs, where you went to school.
Yeah.
He brought up an interesting point. He just said that, he goes, there's too many people in his head, too many swing coaches for Jordan Walker. So I don't know. I think he was really wounded. And I think, maybe those first 50 at-bats, his head wasn't right. And now he's hitting a little bit better. Look, I'm not giving up on him. I don't think he's going to be Jason Hayward, have that kind of erratic hitting career. Your father suggested the amount of positions he's played, came up as a third baseman, then they moved him to the left and then the right. And, he's probably going to end up as a first baseman for the Cardinals when
That's what I keep thinking. Yeah.
Look, I look at a guy's character a little bit. He is such a good guy from unbelievable parents, real strong faith. I don't think these guys fold like napkins. I remember Keith Hernandez when I was growing up. He had this type of hype. He was a bust 3 different times. And then one day Kenny Boyer said, you are going to play regardless. If you go 0 for 100, you're playing first base for me. And that's what kind of confidence we got to give in Jordan
Nice
Walker.
to hear.
Yeah. Not many get that luxury.
No.
No,
But
that's
some should be afforded it.
Yeah.
So now there's a rumor floating about the Cardinals possibly at the trade deadline looking to trade Gray. What do you think of that? Because he's $10 million this year. He goes up after that. There's talk if the Cardinals become sellers that they would look to maybe part with him because he would get the biggest amount of return.
I don't get that. If they're out of it at the deadline, I get Goldschmidt. Okay, move him. I even think about Helsley because his contract, I think he has 1 more year. But if you have Sonny Gray for 2 more years, and that number for what he produces is not astronomical, what message are you sending to Cardinal fans? Well, we have a pretty good number 1 starting pitcher, but we're going to move him now. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I would agree. I just was reading that this morning, and I'm like, man, that just makes no sense to me. I would not look to part with him. If anything, I'd be looking to find another young pitcher to pair up with him to have a good 1-2 combo because I really feel like that's what the Cardinals are lacking. I feel, if they had another Sonny Gray in that rotation right now as a number 2. Then it would flesh itself out much
Yeah.
better.
Kyle Gibson would be a fine number 3. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But as your number 2, I'm not certain.
I agree.
Well, we mentioned earlier their last 21. They were that I don't care if it's April or maybe April. Getting in the season, you go for a stretch for 20 days, 14 of that. I think shows that you're capable of being a good.
And you got to remember too, is moving forward, Lars Nootbaar one day is going to be healthy. He's a productive offensive player, and Wilson Contreras was your best offensive player when he got injured. So if you got those two back, with Wynn and Gorman becoming a star, and Goldschmidt will get better, and Arenado will get better, and I think Donovan will get better, you got a shot. So I'm interested in today's start, actually, in Miles Michaelis. He's been the most disappointing. I mean, with an ERA in the mid-5s for what they're paying him, I don't know how you feel. You would know this better than anybody, but I know they say you want to throw in the strike zone a lot. But I don't know if his stuff is good enough to be in the strike zone a lot.
Yeah, he might be that tier pitcher where being in the strike zone, looking like you're in the strike zone, being okay with the walk.
Yeah.
And creating more contact.
His stuff when he had the All-Star season, it was different than it is now. In fact, there's a pitcher in the Cardinal organization, you brought up the relievers, I forgot to mention his name, is Riley O'Brien. When I was in Jupiter, everybody was gushing about Riley O'Brien. I remember I had dinner one night with the manager, and he was saying, you will not believe his stuff. And the whole organization was wild about him. And then he got hurt. That's another, you're like 4 guys that you were counting on in the middle of the bullpen that you were really counting on that have just done nothing for you all season long.
Yeah.
I remember that name was like,
yeah.
On.
Oh yeah. That's another one. Yeah, agreed. The Cardinals have a bright future, though. I think in a lot of those young guys, you look at guys like that, and you look at the Gormans, and it seems like for the first time in a long time, they're grooming some good talent around the organization. I don't remember here we were just talking about Walker being a first baseman. I don't remember who was going to be that first baseman before Goldschmidt. Who was going to be the third baseman before Arenado. It didn't seem like we were developing core players for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the David Freed.
Oh, yeah. And guys, your brother may have played with, the Alan Craigs and the John Jays and the Descalsos and everything.
That's how you create good teams, having a little unit that came up together.
Yeah, the fall of Jordan Walker, because if you just have him growing with Wynn and Gorman, what a nice trio to build around, all guys 24 and younger. That's the thing about Nolan Gorman. He just turned 24. And he's going to be a second baseman that may hit 40. And I know everybody talks about his batting average, but a lot of the analytics people, batting average doesn't matter. It matters a little bit, but if you have an OPS of 820 or 830 and you hit 40 home runs and you're playing good second base, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, so talking about the good team, I was just thinking about the core like the Cardinals had the years that they were all good. They had that core that came from minor leagues. I'm thinking about the Dodgers. They had Andre Ethier, Matt Kemp, Clayton Kershaw. Like they always have a core that knew about the system that came up. They always do. They
the Cardinal way.
The Cardinal way.
George Kissel gone, and even Mike Schilt kind of alluded to that about a few months ago that the Cardinal way is no longer in existence because you don't have that incredible guy. And Schilt was one of those guys. He was, almost a modern day version of George Kissel. So that firing, when I retire, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, that'll go down as the greatest mystery of all time, is why Mike Schilt was fired. After they just went to the postseason, he was the manager of the year one time. He was a finalist for the manager of the year. And you hear everything from him getting a little too big for his bridges and pushing back a little bit with John Mozeliak, which I think is certainly legitimate, or him not treating coaches well, which still shocks me because he's like the nicest guy you could ever meet. I can't picture him yelling at Willie McGee or something like that, which I'm sure he didn't do anyway, but that's
bizarre. That was bizarre.
Yeah. We interviewed him on that Sunday right after the season. He lived in Clayton. We went out, we were in his terrace. We did this long 20-minute interview about the future and how he was on the club. Then all of a sudden on Wednesday, he gets a call from John Mozeliak saying, "We're going to be calling you on Zoom in about a half hour. We need to talk." And then boom.
Wow, I agree. That was
And he put in, I mean, how many years did he put
Oh
in the
my gosh, yeah.
organization? 20, 30?
Yeah.
yeah. I agree. I thought that was. I also thought it was bizarre with Matheny because that one seemed a little bizarre too because he'd gone to World Series, took you to the playoffs twice, and he has one half bad season. I mean, that was. I knew there was some. Obviously, there were kinks in the armor. Some of his flaws were being. The bullpen management was all being asked a lot. But on the other hand, some of that you grow into too. I mean, part of that's just maturing as a manager. So
Players still got to play.
Yeah. And with Mike, I think part of it was media related, which I didn't think was an issue. I thought he was fine. He may not have been as forthcoming as like a Whitey or a Tony, but he was fine. There's probably a little bit of a strained relationship with Mo there, but look, I think his winning percentage is higher than LaRusse's, or at least as a Cardinal, and higher than Whitey. So he did some really good things. History will treat him better than what it did when he was fired.
agreed. I agree. And I also thought about when he as good as he did losing core players because within this first year, Albert's gone, first baseman, right?
Yeah.
And right as they hired him, and then
They got Beltran right away when they lost Albert. He had a good team, and he went to World Series.
yeah.
He has his hands full.
What do you mean?
And the Padres?
Oh, you're talking about Schilt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Schill has the Padres. That's
Yeah, it's a little different than dealing with hustling Cardinal farmhands as opposed to some of those elite superstars out there making all that money. Yeah.
I just think
I think a job out in California is going to be. Seems like the teams out there, players go out there and they look like an Albert. They never quite perform as well. I look at other players, Vladimir Guerrero with the Angels. In modern day, not old school Angels, but like the more modern, the past 20 years. The Dodgers are the only ones that seem to have a winning way somehow ingrained in them.
Oh.
Yeah, outside of Trout.
right. And what did they fail to do? Bring up other people that were around him.
Yeah.
Came up together.
It's almost a tragedy what his supporting cast. They got an unproductive Albert, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, they signed. What was that pitcher from the Rangers? When they signed Albert, they signed that pitcher and he never did. He was good that one year for the Rangers. Went to the World Series against us, and
I don't remember his name.
I don't even. That's how bad it was. I don't remember his name either. He had a couple of really good seasons for the Rangers, and then he never. They signed him some big contract. They signed Hamilton to like a 3-year deal, like a year later, around the same. Was it the same time or a year later?
Yeah.
And that one failed. He went back to his old ways. It was like they were trying, but they were trying to do it outside the organization, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's kind of been the Angels' way, right?
It was a great effort.
And now you look at them; they could have traded Show last year and at least got something. I mean, it didn't go anywhere last year. That was a mystery to me too. Why at the trade deadline you got a guy like that? Why wouldn't you try to get what you can at this point? Because you knew you weren't going to keep him.
That would have been wise.
Hey, thanks for watching this short with us today. And if you like it, check out our full episodes on our channel and website. We'll put those in the links below. And as always, Scott,
like and subscribe. Or subscribe and then like. Whatever order you want, really.
Whatever order you like.
Yeah.
Thanks.